Hi guys. So today we're going to cover this kind of opening again. So last time, if you look at my previous video, I talked about how if black plays this move, which is a pretty decent move to develop the right side, white can immediately start an attachment, and with a crosscut, afterwards black would be able to develop thickness, but eventually white would get sente and be able to limit black thickness with a large knight's move enclosure. So basically the result was that black might be slightly not happy with the result because he has the influence facing the wrong direction of the board. And this time we're going to look at what happens if black makes some improvements to his opening. For example, in this case, black can consider a corner approach here first, and then come back here to build his potentially double wing formation. And if white still goes through the same attachment and crosscut, then at least this time, the approaching stone will work well with the influence that black would develop. So instead of attaching here, a move like this, where you approach this already enclosed corner, is actually a pretty good move according to AI. And usually after, you can consider this as almost like a invasion stone to black's um, Moyo framework. And a lot of times when you invade, your opponent will most likely want to pincer you. Otherwise, white would be able to make a base. So we're going to talk about this local sabaki position, where white needs to somehow make life in a comfortable way. So the first move that we would consider would be a one space jump, which in this case is okay, except we need to be really careful about dealing with this move. This move is basically trying to commit to building the framework on the right side while using these two stones as a background to attack white's invasion stones. So if we were to play any sort of attachment, trying to manage the group, then I think white's invasion stones are not particularly efficient. Where black is only gaining strength on the outside and probably gaining more profit while white's running. So the attachment turns out to be a really bad move. And if you just keep pushing, it feels like you're helping your opponent building too much territory. So the really interesting AI move that came up with was a direct invasion. So let's look at this one example where if black jumps out, where would white play in this local position? So here's something that we should always be mindful of. These kind of one space pincer and one space counter pincer, there is always a backdoor where you just play on the second line, where you can connect from here all the way to here. So let's look at this real quick. Black Hanes, cut, Tari. You can already see how this stone is all the way, just run over black's one space jump and is all the way connected over here. And now, the moment when white is attacking this second line stone, white is already in a pretty good position to, it's already in a pretty good sabaki position. White is not going to die. If black captures, obviously white is aiming at a direct invasion into the corner while settling this weak group. So usually this is too big of a move to give up, so black would defend. But if black defends, then this corner enclosure becomes extremely awkward. You spend 3 moves just to enclose this many points. Then black all of a sudden becomes inefficient, or over-concentrated, you can even say. And what's really interesting is that later on, white always has an attachment to make black's corner even more over-concentrated. So let's just look at 2 simple diagrams where Black plays a Hane. Here, white can play a Hane. If black connects or extends that, yeah, that is already good for white. White got an extra 2 invasion stones in black's territory. Then this move becomes really silly. It's like a dame. If black captures something, white leaves some aji. Black can, focus on capturing. Then here, all of a sudden, white has a really nice peep. If black wants to defend its territory, then white just kind of penetrated through black's entire corner. There's still some aji on this side, and there's still some cutting aji over here. So this result would be really poor for black. So if black plays more passively, turns out this aji is still really annoying. White can peep again, and there's this aji of pulling the stone out. If black defends, white can actually comfortably live here. For example, if black blocks, here black actually has a lot of cutting points. He wants to defend his cutting points efficiently while attacking white, so he can consider an extension. But turns out, while for white, it's not too hard to live. Just a really simple second line extension. Moves like this don't really work because black stone still owes a move, and if black owes a move, white can just bend and easily live here. Yeah, just any sort of bump will work. So in this case, black's best move is to defend his corner territory, and with a second line move, yeah, black can't even play this anymore. Yeah, it's pretty easy for white to live here, while black still suffer a lot from all these cutting points. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting invasion point that black needs to be mindful of after spending 3 moves defending this corner. So this is the first variation that I would like to talk about, where in this situation it seems like white is in danger, but it turns out this invasion would help these two, managing the situation of these 2 white stones a lot. So now we're looking at the variation where black plays this diagonal move to ensure the separation between these 2 groups. So here obviously white doesn't want to just let the stone die. The typical response is to extend, which in this case is fine. And if black continues want to attack these 2 white stones, black can consider extending. And then now black is kind of threatening jumping out here or enclosing white 2 stones with a knight's move. So white seems like she's kind of in trouble. But let's focus on managing one side first. First of all, white connects her stone. Potentially has really good territory. It becomes really difficult for black to invade 3-3 successfully now. So now black must get something significant here in return. Let's say black wants to develop the center and also swallow up these 2 stones. So how should white appropriately manage these 2 stones? So it turns out, well, first of all, the second line connection doesn't work anymore. But it turns out that these 2 stones are not very good at defending the corner. And it was recommended by Katako to play this move to invade the corner. Say black tries to separate, white tries to connect. There's really not a whole lot of value in blocking here because it's pretty clear that white would be able to live easily. So usually black would want to bend first and make a nice shape. And white extends into the corner, and then black now plays this Hane, connects, and exposes black's cutting point. Black should defend, and then now white pushes, create cutting points, and then lives in the corner. And here there's a little Tetsuji that black can use to thicken the outside by giving up a second line stone. Now, at this point, white can already Tenuki. There's a Sente endgame, it's pretty big, but white does not need to play. White can play elsewhere. Probably a move that would reduces black's Moyo. But as you can see, white has Sente lived in black's corner enclosure, and black in exchange for black capturing these two stones. So regarding this board position, if we have to figure out the appropriate reduction point, we should always look at first of all, analyze the sector line, which basically means the outermost stones that black extends from the edge of each wall. So for example, the top side, this is the end of the wall, and the bottom side, the end of the wall probably would be here. And if you just draw a line between there, you would know this would be like the sector line. And usually for reduction purposes, you would want to place somewhere along the sector line. But on top of that, not only you need to see the sector line, you also want to look at your own potential to build influence. So for example, if I just place some random move around, say here, sure, it might function well as a good reduction stone, but it's a stone that's just floating in midair and it's not rooted anywhere. It's hard to make the stone become efficient when it comes to building territory. But if you were to pick a stone that has a good follow-up, you're mindful of your surroundings, and in this case, your closest neighbor is this group. If you play like this, say for a really simple example, say black play like this, white can probably get a nice little exchange, limiting black to this amount of territory, and then white later on can consider a move like this. Then all of a sudden, you will see that white is actually secretly building influence to the top side of the board here. So when you're picking these reduction points, it's really important to think about where you can link up your group to and how does that basically expand or build your own sector line. And in this case, you raise your head of your group all the way from second line all the way to the center, which could be potentially really impressive depending on how the top side goes. So yeah, turns out this is the recommended AI move by both Katago and Leela. So it's important to remember that when you're reducing, you're not only just playing along your opponent's sector line, but also you're potentially building up your own influence.